So some concerning stuff has come out after the Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj ended, but nobody really seems to be talking about it. So let's talk about it. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Sharma Show Global. This is the Sharma Show, but in English. So we all know and love Hasan Minhaj, don't we? He is the guy that finally understood us, the Browns. In fact, he represented and understood brown people so well that he told them that they were bad Asians if they did not vacate their college seats for black and Hispanic students.
And for those in the Asian community who keep insisting, we just want equality, we're American citizens, treat us like Americans, fine. But if you are willing to act like racism isn't a thing, team up with lawyers, and then take it to the courts when you don't get your way, you're right. You truly are an American. You just happen to be the worst kind.
He explained to us some of the most important problems being faced within the brown communities, the problem of Islamophobia.
That's like Netflix having the first Muslim talk show host and bodyguard. Stay woke, Netflix. It's good. It's so good you almost forget about the Islamophobia. Almost.
The other serious problem of Islamophobia.
Talking about politics in India can get you in a lot of trouble, especially because I'm Indian and Muslim. It's very weird to be something that people love and then also be something that people do not like.
And finally, the most important serious problem of Islamophobia.
We should think about the people of Kashmir, the 8+ million people. I'm scared because I think that things are only going to get worse. And we're seeing an erosion of autonomy.
That's right, because if you think about it, that's really the biggest issue in Kashmir, right? I mean, really think about it. Genocides happen everywhere in the world, so that's not really that big of a deal. Terrorism happens everywhere in the world, so that's really not that big of a deal. But just imagine for a second that non-Kashmiris that live in Kashmir can apply for government jobs. Non-Kashmiris that have lived in Kashmir their whole lives can now buy property in Kashmir. Kashmiri women that marry non-Kashmiri men will not lose their rights anymore. I mean, the only way really that this can get worse is if homosexuality was decriminalized in Kashmir. What's that? Oh, it's been decriminalized. So Hasan Minhaj very much likes to play the role of the moral arbiter of the brown people. Him and his show wanted to set the trend for how brown people should think. On the one hand, all brown people were the same and they had the same experiences.
Especially when you think about the countries that we come from. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Egypt, Libya, Palestine, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Vietnam, Cambodia, China, Japan, Laos, the Philippines.
On the other hand, he also liked to put brown people into two distinct categories. The first category was the good brown people who ticked all the woke boxes. They believed in free Kashmir, they believed in the one-state solution for Palestine. They believed that Modi is a fascist, that anybody that supports Modi is also a fascist by proxy. They believed that business owners who were unhappy that their stores got lit on fire and destroyed as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests, those store owners are terrible people because all brown people care about is money.
Even my community is speaking out, but let's be real. It's probably because it affects the bottom line.
Like they somehow deserved it for not speaking up sooner. All they care about is money. What a great way to stereotype. It's not like this kind of stereotyping has ever backfired in the past. Too on the nose? Yeah. And so recently, Netflix cancelled the Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj after almost 2 years. And look, I wish him well. Also because it's not just him that was involved with the show. Creating a show of such scale and creating a show like the Patriot Act takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of people, takes a lot of producers, a lot of writers. So I do wish all those writers and producers well, even though all that talent was put to terrible use. The whole of Patriot Act was basically season 8 of Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'm still salty about it. But what I am gonna miss the most is probably Hasan Minhaj milking his brown identity and leveraging his Desi credentials while at the same time taking a giant steaming dump on a large section of that same brown Desi community. But what I really want to talk about today is that a very interesting development has occurred after the show ended, and I'm genuinely surprised that a lot of people and a lot of organizations and a lot of mainstream media outlets aren't really talking about it. So after the show ended, one of the producers on the show, Noor Nasreen Ibrahim, tweeted this: "I avoided talking about the Patriot Act because each time I relive the experience of being humiliated and gaslit, targeted and ignored, I sink back into the days of depression. But I wonder if it was worth the mental anguish I went through over my last few months there. I wish we still had Patriot Act. I also wish they truly practiced the progressive ethos that they cultivated on screen. Then they would really deserve all your love.
Interesting.
Now that's not a direct shot at Hasan necessarily. That could have been aimed at a number of other people that were involved with the show. And there's another legitimate question to be asked after this tweet is, why now? Why wait all this time and wait for the show to get cancelled to now come out with your grievances about the show? Why not come out before? And I think that is a legitimate question. But at the same time, it also seems to be a deeper problem than just one person making random accusations. Another producer for the Patriot Act said, "It was traumatizing to witness Sheila and Noor, intrepid producers who led some of our top episodes, Amazon, Saudi Arabia, Indian elections, be silenced, treated unfairly, and made to later doubt their own skills in a toxic newsroom. It's sobering how few it takes to create and enable these kinds of toxic experiences and for them to continue for way too long." Sounds like a case of practice what you preach.
We were on the fucking sidelines watching.
Another tweet says, "While Patriot Act should be celebrated for the underrepresented voice it brought to a blizzard-wide genre, it should also be condemned. Noor is my brilliant friend who, among other women of color, faced mistreatment while employed by the show. Brown women like Nouri Ibrahim and Sheila V were treated so badly at Patriot Act, and it's a crucial thing for anyone who loved the show to know." Another person associated with the show tweeted, "The show was not just one star's brilliance and charisma. The people whose labor made it what it was were treated horribly, and I've watched my friends break down in real time from what they went through while working there. So many tweets about Patriot Act have been sitting in my drafts. It's okay to mourn a good thing, but after the ubiquitous paeans to its greatness, all I'll say is, please interrogate your beacons of representation and how they behave once they acquire power and authority."
We think we're not a part of the story, but we're at the scene of the crime. That's why the full picture matters. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens in a system.
Now that seems a little more pointed. Another person involved with the show, Sheila Kumar, who was one of the first people to speak out, said, "I've never been more unhappy than when I was working at Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj. I feel even more compelled to say, given some video Hasan Minhaj seems to have released, something about what happens when we stand by and do nothing. I can't stomach watching it because it reeks of hypocrisy." Now these seem a lot less ambiguous. To be woke is to take an introspective look inside and recognize when you have messed up. Hasan Minhaj and Patriot Act, are you willing to do that? I understand more than a lot of people the need to support brown shows. It seems that these people are not naming names because to protect the reputation of the star of the show, a progressive brown Muslim voice. But the more I hear about how some of them work behind the scenes, the more I feel the need to make these voices, always women, usually of color, heard. Why is this not a bigger deal? And I think this tweet really gets to the root of the problem. Because if you look at the comments to a lot of these tweets that these people have posted as well, a lot of them are offering support as they should. But also, most of them are not digging any deeper. Most of them are not really trying to find out what really happened at the show. It almost feels like no one really wants to dig too deep into what happened in case they stumble onto something that might ruin the reputation of this wonderfully progressive show. And it's interesting because when the show was being praised, when the show was being reviewed, it was being mentioned in every single mainstream media organization as this revolutionary show. And to be honest, in many ways, I suppose it was. And also one thing we need to understand, and I think which is a big caveat in this situation, is that a lot of these allegations that have been made are pretty vague. There aren't specific allegations made against specific people except for one or two tweets. So I understand that the situation currently isn't very clear. But at the same time, I am going to go out on a limb and I am going to say that if it was a character like a Ben Shapiro or a Steven Crowder or like a Tucker Carlson or an Arnab Goswami, and such allegations had come out from their shows, there would be way more mainstream media coverage of these allegations than the coverage that is on offer right now. And if you think about it, covering a toxic workplace, especially against women of color, which is either encouraged or perpetrated or ignored by the star of the show should really be making more headlines, especially in the age of intersectionality, especially in the age of solidarity with women of color, and especially now that Ellen has gotten so much mainstream media attention and social media attention for the allegations of fostering a toxic work environment. So, why isn't there that much attention on the Patriot Act and the allegations made against the Patriot Act and the star of the show, Hasan Minhaj? Maybe it's because the star of the show is a progressive brown Muslim. Maybe because certain people have put this person on the very tippy top of the intersectional pyramid. You put him on a pedestal and you said that this is a very special person and that any criticism of this person is basically Islamophobia. And now that so many accounts are coming out of possible mistreatment by him, of his staff, now it's very hard for you to attack him because you were the ones who built him the fortress of intersectionality in the first place. And so maybe that's why when covering these allegations made against the show, a lot of these publications and a lot of social media is silent. The only outlets that I've seen this whole issue being covered by is a couple of Pakistani outlets like Dawn and Tribune, the Quint from India, and a Twitter blogger. And look, again, having said all that, I think it's important to wait to hear Hasan's side of the story and the Patriot Act's side of the story, because that would only be fair. And because if you do look at the allegations, they are relatively vague. But so far, we haven't heard anything at all. We haven't heard a peep. For a show and for a person that ostensibly cares so deeply about the brown Desi community, there's been a suspicious amount of silence over some pretty serious allegations of creating a toxic work environment, and allegations which have been corroborated by a number of people that were associated with the show. So ideally, the media should really be putting pressure on Hasan. The media should be putting pressure on the show to explain their side of the story about the truth behind these allegations. Are these allegations true? Who are these allegations being directed at? And are the people who are responsible for creating this toxic work environment, will they be held responsible? But I don't see any of that happening in the mainstream or even on social media in any big way whatsoever. And I want to ask you, do you think that this issue needs to be covered more seriously? Do you think this issue deserves more coverage? And do you think that if the star of the show was a conservative commentator instead of a liberal progressive Muslim commentator, that this issue would get a lot more media coverage? Do you agree or do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Once again, guys, if you liked today's episode, make sure to leave a like, leave a thumbs up. It helps me out. It helps the Sharma Show Global out. Also, if you like today's show and if you'd like to support the Sharma Show Global, make sure to become a patron of the show by clicking on the Patreon link in the description down below. Also, if you like today's show, if you like the Sharma Show Global, and we've already reached 50,000 subscribers, help us get to 100,000. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to press the bell icon as well, and check out our episodes here and our episodes here that I'm sure you'll enjoy as well. I will see you for the next episode, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys soon.